Welcome to Lay of the Brand, where we talk with the experts on tech marketing, creative, and PR to learn what's new, what's working, and what's next. I'm Peter Jacobs with Barrett Group. The customer journey was never really a straight line, but now that familiar funnel is completely fractured. And whether it's B2B or B2G, the more complex the sale, the more convoluted the journey. Today's buyers jump around throughout the decision process, loop in new stakeholders midstream, and often do months of research before ever speaking to sales. So why are so many marketing strategies still built around a linear funnel? That's why we're talking with Pat Barrett, head of marketing for federal business process enabler Unison. We'll unpack the messy reality of the modern buyer journey and uncover how you can build trust, stay relevant, and make sure you're solving customer problems at every step when you don't control the path. Pat, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with a big picture. What are the biggest misconceptions marketers still have about the buyer's journey, especially in a long, complex enterprise or government sales cycle?
Yeah, I think you started with it, but it's not linear, right? It's chaotic, fragmented. There's forward and backwards motion that is difficult to predict. I also think that there's still a belief in a shift from marketing to sales. There's really not a handoff, I would say, anymore. It's a combined effort through the whole process. And then the idea that marketing can somehow push someone through this imaginary funnel, especially in enterprise software sales, that just does not add up with the world that we live in.
Yeah, the sales cycles are so long. I mean, we know in government, the sales cycle, we're talking like 18 months to 2 years. But even in large corporate sales cycles, it's not just, yeah, fine, here's a credit card or here's a purchase order. Yeah. There's all kinds of obstacles and committees and approvals that have to be dealt with and gone through. So the idea that somebody is just going to follow a straight line from awareness to, hey, tell me more, to, okay, let's talk brass tacks here and sign something, it's just not realistic.
Not at all. I think it's interesting because I think some people can think, oh, now the prospect is running the show, and in my mind, the goal is to make them feel like they're running the show. But there's marketing signposts along the way. I would say it's similar to like a GPS, right? Like you put in the destination, the GPS spits out the route. Like, sure, you're in the driver's seat, but are you actually running the show? And I like to kind of envision marketing as having those touch points and well-placed marketing content along the way where they think they're driving. They're in the driver's seat, but are they really making all the decisions on their own?
That's a really interesting way of putting it. I would imagine that a lot of folks who are starting to research and learn about a new technology that might be applicable to their business operations would feel like, well, I know how to research stuff because it's how I buy stuff for myself personally. So I go online, I check Reddit, I check with my peers and find out, hey, what have you done about this? And that, I believe, is where the whole linear process just totally falls apart.
Yeah, exactly. I think people definitely carry over their personal consumer behaviors into their complex work journeys as well. And to think that marketing shouldn't try to align with those or do something different just doesn't add up to reality.
Say you started speaking with a potential buyer. So you're just past the awareness sale. You've gotten into the inbound lead stage of things. What happens when you stop hearing from them, or they start making decisions that jump them further down the line than they may not actually be ready for? Because you, as a marketer, as a salesperson, your job is to make sure that they're going to get the thing that they need at the time that they need it. But maybe they've jumped ahead in the process, or maybe it's just stalled. So how do you then retain trust and build more trust and stay relevant to them?
Yeah, I think it's consistently being useful, whether there's silence on the other end or not, right? Remaining findable, remaining present. I think from the sales side, there's a lot of hand holding and experience needed to kind of gauge where something's headed or what their current situation and how they're acting and then signals. But on the marketing side, I think it's about consistently being present and findable. Just because someone's quiet with us doesn't mean that they're necessarily quiet. They're just may just be doing things on their own. And it's important that we continue to align with that mentality and behavior to stay top of mind, even if we're not getting direct responses.
Right. So, what kinds of content or other tactics is most effective to reach a buyer, considering all these unpredictable touch points?
Blogs, I found in our world are pretty effective, mainly because the volume can be high and the specific topics can vary so widely. So if everybody in every buyer has some different set of features or specifics that they're looking for. It could be compliance or whatever it may be. And blogs give us a nice kind of library of specific topics for those people who are doing their independent research. Um, I think case studies are another good one. Less so about just reporting on stats, but really describing the narrative and the pain the client would have had they not had the product. Speaking to that, making sure that that's front and center is important from a prospect perspective. And then third party like thought leadership articles are really valuable as well because that lends a different type of credibility for someone who's doing their own research. If they Google something or see us on a media outlet, um, those words resonate a bit differently than something on our self-published site.
Right. It's part of why so many people will ask their peers, what do you think about this situation? And then what do you think about this product, this company? Do you have any experience with them? And having that third party credibility is crucial just to make sure that they see you as trustworthy.
Right. And an authoritative type voice in the market. Like it's not just us talking to ourselves on our own.
Right. What about channels? What kinds of channels are working?
We leverage LinkedIn a lot, and especially from the paid standpoint. I think it's an enterprise software provider. Organically on LinkedIn is an uphill battle. But targeting on LinkedIn through paid has been successful for us. Also, sponsored content on key media players in our ecosystem has also proven valuable. I would say the kind of email drip campaign channel is not something that we rely too heavily on. Again, going back to that, pushing someone through a funnel, we more focus on getting discovered compared to just delivering things to people directly.
Have you looked into influencer marketing?
Interesting. So I think it's an interesting time to go about that as well, especially in the federal market. I think there's a lot of voices out there at the moment, and it can be a tricky thing to do well and safely. I would say. I think sometimes there's risk involved with that. I would say we've more so focused on getting good speakers for like internal events or outside kind of perspectives or could be a panel with clients, things like that, where we're bringing in outsiders, but not relying on an influencer type personality.
I'm wondering what your experience has been with becoming findable through search, especially as generative AI is starting to take over search.
Yeah. So we our content has always taken the approach where we're providing value to the audience, less about us, more about them. And I think that has positioned us well from an AI search standpoint. You know, AI seems to not love product pages and things like that unless you're specifically asking. But it's trying to give the user valid, valuable answers to the questions it's asking. And we've seen a pretty decent uptick in website traffic through AI LLMs. So I think it's hard to predict, never mind year to year, day to day, what those algorithms are. are focusing on and doing. Reddit is another, Google AI seems to prioritize that a bit heavily at the moment. So we've dipped our toes into the water there and tried to figure out, best way to engage with that community in a professional manner. But, I found if you are writing content about a specific topic that's informative and informational and insightful, then we've performed pretty well with AI.
Earlier, you talked about the relationship between marketing and sales, and there's always a blurring of lines at the handoff. Trying to determine what is a marketing qualified lead is getting harder and harder. But we also have to deal with the fact that marketing wants credit for it, sales wants credit for it, and everyone says we're all one big team here, right? What's the reality when you're dealing with a nonlinear process?
Yeah. So I think that is the age old battle of marketing and sales. I've done my best throughout my career to not have that be the case. One thing that I've done consistently is a marketing qualified lead is focus on inbound. So a demo request, and if we do the initial qualification, and that seems to kind of give sales less, hey, this person came to our booth or read our blogs or something. It's a lot more tangible and real than more abstract general marketing leads. And also having I have sales development on my team as well, and I found that's a helpful bridge between marketing and sales because he's able to, that function's able to work, kind of warm, engaged prospects or, warmer leads compared to inbound conversions. And then, he can then work those and pass those to sales. So I think, it's a lot of transparency. Sales knows exactly. I meet with each of the sales teams weekly, and they have a very good idea of what's going on, leads that have come in, stuff the SDR is working, and just alignment there.
Is there a loop of information so that sales lets you know what's working or lets you know how things are progressing?
Yeah, so we have everything integrated, our marketing automation tool and our CRM. So those things carry over seamlessly. So let's say someone submits a demo request who marketing was engaging with, that activity follows over on the CRM side. So and not just history, but also new activities. So we don't stop marketing to those people once they're inbound. We continue that activity, and sales has full visibility into all that engagement right in the CRM.
Engagement being the key word. You don't want somebody to feel like, hey, I've hooked you. Now I'm going to turn you over to that person.
Yeah, right.
The last thing anybody wants to feel like is, well, I'm just a number and I'm being sold to.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you give an example, good or bad, of where you tried to align with this nonlinear journey?
Yeah, I think it's a little difficult to point to a single event. I think adapting to a non-linear buyer journey is really just a foundational shift in marketing strategy. Similar to how the modern buyer journey isn't comprised of single moments. I wouldn't think, I don't really have a single moment here either. I feel like we kind of had to rewire how we think about providing relevant and accessible content that really meets people where they are. And that's even if the first touch point may be a old late stage funnel asset, and the second touch point is a higher level thought leadership blog. Like just making sure that you know th- we are there, and whether they're moving forwards or backwards, we're accessible.
So, what kind of lessons have you learned as you've been developing this way of doing things? I'm sure some things have worked great and other things, hey, maybe we'll try that again.
Yeah, I think pressure on sales to be like co-architects in the process. I wish I did more of. I think there's been tremendous value in that. They know when a buyer asks for a certain asset or a certain question in the journey. They know when they may pull in security. They know certain insights that I've found over time that I wish I pressed for upfront a bit more.
Are you finding that you're creating different types of assets to meet all of these different stages?
Yes, and I would also say we take an account approach as well, right? So especially in enterprise software, larger accounts, we do dedicate more time to if they have a specific challenge that requires a specific case study or a specific piece of collateral around security or something, we'll take the time to do that.
If marketers are trying to figure this out for themselves, it being something that it's a reality, but not everybody's dealing with it, where would they start? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, I think evaluating your content types and placement. Can it be found where buyers are actually looking throughout a stretch of a long period of time, right? Or is it buried behind a form or in some nurture drip campaign that maybe they'll end up in, maybe they won't? Or can they autonomously come across the assets you want them to? Um, I mentioned being built for discovery, and really making sure that content is valuable and usable across a spectrum of time because it's hard to content can take a lot of work and be pretty high calorie, and making sure you're getting the most use out of that is super important. And also making sure that, it's in the right places. We don't really have any form bills on our site for content. Everything is just accessible, findable, and people can access it when and how they need to.
That's really interesting that you aren't gating your content.
Mhm.
What was the decision behind that?
Um, Mainly because I think it's a hurdle that people don't like giving information anymore. They know where that goes and what that's going to be used for. And also like how valuable is that information? We can see if on our tracking back end side, there's a high probability we can see if they viewed the content anyway. And having them fill a form or give us more information that we probably already have, that value doesn't outweigh the value that we want our content to give to them.
What would you recommend to a marketer that they should stop doing in order to meet this new way of engaging with customers?
Yeah, I think that the kind of do X activity and you get Y. Like I don't really think that mentality in marketing is that formulaic approach holds much water anymore. I think that doesn't take into account the compound effect of what marketing can do over time, and looking at things in short time frames or campaign specific approach. You're losing out on the bigger picture. Measuring isolated activities goes along with the fact that the buyer journey is simple enough to measure that way. In my case, a year is not much time at all from a buying perspective, and making sure that marketing's matching that compared to we're going to do this and we think we're going to get this, and then reporting out if that aligned or not.
Has that same model of a nonlinear journey carried through to the federal side?
Yeah, I think more so than elsewhere. I think even with formal RFP processes and uh, regulations around things, I think there's a consistent uh, lack of a straight line motion from someone reaches out to us or releases an RFP, and then they kind of go down the process. I think there's a lot of back and forth, and especially in today's climate, even more complexity around procuring software. Yeah, it's definitely not linear.
As we talked about earlier, for both commercial enterprise sales and federal sales, there's so many sign-offs. There's so many decision points, And it's not just the one person says, yes, do it. They're hearing from the people that they trust. They're hearing from everybody who's got a stake in the outcome. And of course, they've got very specific budget requirements and limitations. Is that all contributing to this nonlinear journey?
Yeah, for sure. Then I think there's also the people who aren't even in the room with the sales guys that are researching and doing things on the back end and maybe contributing to the conversation that we're not even aware of. And then, like you said, we may think we're with the champion or the main voice, and then 8 months down the line, something changes or someone new enters the fold who has more say than someone else. Budgets change, like you said. So I think all that contributes for sure.
So you've got to be creating content for all those people, even if you don't know exactly who they are. And you also have to be using mechanisms to get that information in front of them.
Yeah. And again, I think, the one good thing with digital is people are independent in finding that stuff themselves. So, it's less about delivering to those specific people and really making sure that, and it does, for instance, we could talk about cybersecurity and make it be relevant to multiple stakeholders. It doesn't have to be so detailed that it's for like the chief security officer or something, but there's ways to kind of speak about things to various personas.
So what's the thing you want people to remember about the nonlinear sales process and what marketing can do to help improve things?
Yeah, I think one, it's definitely not going to go back to linear. I think even with technology and AI being the way it is, it's going to become more complex. And marketing to remain persuasive and effective has to stay in line with that. As digital ecosystems grow and search engine optimization changes, marketing can't continue to do the same thing it always did, because you're just not going to get the results that you previously did.
I've been talking with Pat Barrett of Unison. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
And thank you all for joining us. Lay of the Brand is brought to you by Barrett Group, an integrated strategic communications firm that blends the best of PR, marketing, and creative to help our clients tell their stories and build business. Got a topic suggestion or want to share feedback? Subscribe to Lay of the Brand on your preferred podcast platform and leave us a review. And please spread the word and tell your friends and colleagues to tune in as well. To learn more about Barrett Group and the show, check out layofthebrand.com.